Hey everyone, welcome to the KE Report, a company update from Graphene Manufacturing Group, also known as GMG, on our site. Company is traded on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol GMG and on the OTCQX under the symbol GMGMF. I am chatting again with Craig Nicol, founder and CEO of Graphene Manufacturing Group. Now, everyone, thank you for sending in all the questions on the company's three different divisions here: the battery development division, thermal XR, and this G lubricant division, which we just had recent news on. I have another call scheduled with Craig in a couple weeks where we're really going to dive into a lot of these questions. But this interview popped up because the company has released a couple key news releases over the last couple weeks. One being that G lubricant news, another being advancements in the battery development division, moving into the US to start developing, it sounds like, at least some samples. We'll get Craig's info on both of these news releases. So Craig, thanks for taking time to cover this news. Let's get right into the G lubricant news. February 25th, the company released some engine performance testing data. Now, this was multi-year testing. Lot of information in that news release. Can you just summarize it for us, though? What does G lubricant do in terms of enhancing performance in diesel and gasoline engines?
Hey, Corey, it's great to be back on here. Yeah, G lubricant has been our dark horse product all these years. We've been working on it for about 8 years, ever since we really started graphene production. You know, my background being in Shell and lubricants engineer, marketer, we've got it really at the core of our business as well, the knowledge and how the structure of lubricant oils work and diesel and fuel. So it's based off an enormous amount of work. We had it all locked away about 4 years ago, and we've been testing it for about 4 years. And what it basically does is it adds a small amount of graphene into the engine oil, and we make it so it's really easy to do that. And we add that into the engine oil, or people add that into their own engine oil, and then they start to see fuel savings, especially when there's a lot of high load. So when there's a lot of really big momentum to fight against either, starting a truck up or starting a car and moving it. And then at the end of kind of the speed acceleration where you're sitting up against a lot of wind resistance, that's also very high load as well. And those two situations, our graphene lubricant, we call G lubricant, is sitting at somewhere around 8.5%, 8.4% fuel reduction in this trial we've just done. And, it's significant fuel saving, otherwise unheard of this type of that kind of quantum. We're really targeting the diesel engine market for B2B users and, for people who really want to reduce their fuel bills on those older trucks. That's specifically where our product works. The heavier the load and the older the engine, the more that fuel saving will be for them.
So, Craig, because this has been multiple years in testing, and it sounds like you had this product, I guess, fairly locked down quite a few years ago, is there more testing data that you need to undertake here before you can truly go to market with this?
No, we think pretty much all the testing's been done. We have had customers test this all over the world in many different types of engines, and we've seen great results. But to quantify it is always the most difficult. There's many different ways you could do it. We picked this way of having a constant engine speed diesel engine with a power load, where we then control that load and show the different performance outcomes of the lubricant additive with different loads. And we've got such clarity on this with a 99% confidence interval that we know that this data will survive any duress testing or any significant review by any kind of technical team out there. So we fundamentally believe this is good to go, and that's why we're now selling it online and we're doing commercial deals already, and that's gone quite well. I think the opportunity for G lubricant is very large, so we just got to start step by step. We're starting out with English countries, but then we'll slowly move into obviously non-English speaking countries, and because the markets are obviously, the largest is America, China, India, with large amount of diesel trucks, and the amount of fuel that all those countries purchase, you're very quickly in hundreds of billions of dollars, and globally you're in more than $1 trillion of fuel. So just in diesel, and it's similar in petrol, but we're really going to push the B2B diesel space, direct marketing and commercial deals for larger trucks. Obviously, we've got large companies like Rio Tinto who have been, quite clearly focused on this space as well with us. So, we'll have those guys working through the large sales, and then we're also talking to very large oil companies as well. And that will, no doubt eventually show sales. But those guys, I know those companies quite well. They do take time. That's why we've got direct market, and direct market into, small pack type products is very profitable for us and very good for, the end customer as well.
Okay, as you said, look, this product is available on the company's website for purchase right now. In the news release, it says that you are bringing this to market more in April, targeting fleet owners, starting in Australia, expanding to other markets. Craig, how much weight do you need to put behind this product to get it sold to other companies? And to that point, are these companies going to need to test it out within their fleet, or is it right here, right now, you can start selling this rather than having to go through that testing phase again?
Yeah, so the bigger guys will always want to test it. We've just been on calls with enormous number of companies, and they always will want to test it themselves. That's fine. So they pick a truck and they do that. 100 truck fleet, 1,000 truck fleet kind of conversations we're already having, and obviously large miners and various other types of operations. Otherwise, large diesel generating power supply for captive power plants. Also a huge opportunity. So we've really got, I think a really good spread, but also talking to various parts of the value chain, additive companies, oil companies, and tier two blending companies, and you've got the high end specialty blending guys who do the premium oil additives and already out there in the market. We've been talking to for some time, and they're all opportunities. But I think that this is just a massive market play, and it's how we make it, and it's how we make the additive is how the oil additive is how it works. And so I feel quite confident with so many tests that we've done that will work. We have in a 500 ml pack, we only have 5 grams of graphene, and that can help a large articulated truck or a large rig or tractor, however you want to call it, with their 50-litre engine oil sump. It can help them save about $10,000 of fuel a year. So it's a very small amount of graphene with all the technology, nanotechnology done for them. They just pour it into the engine oil cap, and then that enables them to be able to get the fuel reduction that we've been talking about. So, I think that has been tried and true and tested on many different types of engines, and now we've got it with really good clarity with our engine that we've done here with University of Queensland, validating and verifying. The economics are fantastic for the customer, and we need to use very little of our beautiful graphene to make it work, which is the whole design of why we're doing this in the first place.
Well, you have a table within the news release that shows some of those cost savings depending on the type of vehicle it's used in. So everyone, you can click the link in the show notes to read over that news release. What about competitors in this sector here, Craig? I had an email come in that was asking about a company called Liqui Moly that already has over $1 billion in sales. It sounds like a different product that they have, but it also sounds like it's goaling to do the same thing, some sort of fuel efficiency. So what's the competitive landscape out there?
Yeah, and it's varied. So you've got Liqui Moly, and you've got various other brands out there that try to do this. There is no real graphene oil scaled brand. There are some graphene oil additive companies out there and they typically have 10 to 100 times more concentration than ours, which is a big difference on how much oil how much graphene you put into an oil. That can get to a problem where it starts to become too gluggy and affecting your viscosity. We're sitting at 1 in 10,000 in terms of weight, whereas they're sitting at 1 in 1,000 and 1 in 100. Now, when you typically get rid of a diesel engine oil, you're typically getting rid of the oil when it hits, say, 3% or 8%, depends on the energy on the engine, when the soot level gets that high. So, we're putting our graphene in at a carbon level that's about, 1/3000th and 1/8000th of what you would normally reject the oil for and remove it for carbon soot. So, carbon is in the oil already. We're just adding a very small dosage of it. Obviously, it's the shape and how it's actually done, and ours is a kind of a few carbon atoms high and to 10 carbon atoms kind of generally, and then up to about 100 carbon atoms wide. And what that does is that it goes into all the little grooves and scores that you have for the engine, piston seals, and then lubricates the boundary, lubrication in the piston. And that's all we focus on. We aren't trying to help the bearings. We aren't trying to help any type of drive shafts. We're really focused on the pistons, and that's where it works. And, then that's where we get the immediate fuel savings. And then whilst the competitors are there, this technology has the potential to go into commercial fleets. Being on the phone to many different companies about doing trials with commercial fleets that they will pay. And that's, I think, probably the difference. There are a lot of different opportunities out there for people to trial to produce fuel, but generally they don't stick. The science of it is interesting. It's not necessarily all defined. There is an enormous amount of science on what graphene can do in oils and engine oils, and it's obviously a very new technology. So I think, so far we've been well received by, the industry on multiple fronts, and I feel like we will have, some good outcomes out of that pretty quickly, and, the opportunity for sales should follow from that.
Craig, talk to us about production then, in terms of where you're making this right now, how much you can make of this G lubricant, what's the expansion potential. Just give us an overview of, again, the production currently and what we can expect in the future.
Yeah, so we've got about 0.5 ton of graphene production per annum, and that is just on one module, and we'll add more modules as we need it. We're probably going to add another module to our plant this year. It doesn't cost us that much money to do that. And when we've done that, we're expecting to be pushing more of around the 10 ton. We've learned significant amounts of knowledge in this space over the 8 years. So, but from a 0.5 ton, we can make a substantial amount of revenue from that, in the tens of millions from a G lubricant volume. Because we use so little, we put in 5 or say 10 grams per litre of oil, and then we're able to sell that for hundreds of dollars a litre. So the focus of this product has always been high value to the customer, good value to us, and even better value to our shareholders. So that's remained true. It's even got better as we've kind of driven through and understand how it works. I think the fuel savings are pretty large, and we've had many customers around the world who've had more than the numbers we've had, and that's why we feel pretty confident with the 8.5% at this kind of loading. So we'll be giving a lot of the savings, and 90% or so of the savings, to the customer. So that's, I think, going to be really interesting, because that's very disruptive. But then we're still selling it at a 90% margin. So it just gives you understanding of how we can make this work and scale, and how little graphene we need to make so much money.
All right, Craig, final question on this front. Just a bit of an overview on the sales potential here. Look, I get questions on sales for the Thermal XR division. What could come from batteries? I've already gotten questions on the G lubricant division. So when could we reasonably expect some sales to come in? How much could you ramp them up? And how much focus do you need to shift this company to focus on the sales of G lubricant right now?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of automatic sales, Corey. Owner drivers are globally very large amounts of the truck drivers own businesses globally. So in Australia, for instance, 95% of trucks in Australia are owned by small business. They have, 1 or 2, 3 trucks, and they're exactly the market that we'll be working for there. And it really is just about building brand awareness and direct sale, direct market. Commercial deals with larger fleets will take a bit longer. So, the opportunity in, when we said that, we see this conservatively around $1 billion per annum revenue, and around the world, each different market's going to have opportunities, but that's really in bulk sales. So all those numbers there are quite conservative. The market in Australia alone for small packs is easily over $100 million savings in terms of sales. So opportunities. So just in Australia alone, which is a very small part of the world, there is very large amounts of revenue opportunity. And yeah, that's not where we're stopping at all in any way, shape or form. So we've got various different partners and companies that we're talking to around the world. And that's really, kind of most of the fun of it and the focus of it. It's a very low impact type conversation. You say, here's the product, buy it, test it, buy it again. TXR is kind of the opposite. It's educating people on kind of quantum heat transfer, and it's a lot harder to kind of once you get people in on the TXR, it's a lot harder to move them out. Whereas G Lube is going to be a lot easier we think, to move them in. So, I think that kind of should hopefully explain to people how we see G Lubricant working. I think that we will see sales come in quite good this year. I think we probably need a couple of months before I could call it. We won't give guidance for some time, but I think the opportunity there for exponential sales is there, which we're really excited about. And that's really all about direct marketing globally and delivering it in for what will be a very, very large saving for our customers.
Okay. Well, to your point, it really sounds like this product should help whoever uses it right away in a kind of diesel gas saving environment. So they should see it right away if it really works the way that this testing data shows. So I'll follow up with you to talk sales then. Let's move over to the battery division. March 3rd, you announced a collaboration with a U.S. company, the Battery Innovation Center of Indiana. We're going to shorten that to BIC throughout this interview. This is all in collaboration under that joint development agreement with Rio Tinto for these pouch pack batteries. Talk to us about who BIC is and what the company's going to do working with BIC here to move forward these pouch packs.
Yeah, so we have been saying some time that this year is the pilot plant kind of scale up year. And over the period that we've been assessing the building of our own pilot plant, which has been, relatively probably since we started having our battery development center built over 3 years ago, we've been assessing external pilot plants for developing our battery, really from the battery technology readiness level 5 through to 8. And we're the one that keeps, sticking out. There's only a few in the world, but the one that really keeps popping out for us was the BIC in Indiana. It's basically the premium BIC for America, and it's probably the premium BIC globally as well. It obviously is connected with or in association with our director of GMG, with Bob Gullion, who lives in Indiana and is one of the foremost battery experts in the industry. So, that connection was pretty strong, and that enabled us to really have really good discussions with them. They've done over 500 different types of battery development projects over time with all the big companies that you expect to be doing battery projects in America. And, it's a US government, private / university blended development business that's just sheerly focused on fast tracking battery development for people. One of the things we've got to do for an aluminium ion battery is procure the equipment to do it for the pilot plant. And you can imagine there are 1,000 settings on a pilot plant, all different types of settings. And we really want to work with somebody else before we go and build that ourselves. Now, these pilot plants that they have, or this equipment that they have in Indiana is highly configurable, potentially 20 times more configurable than we would. So what that enables us to do is to test how this pilot plant or equipment they have actually works for our type of aluminium ion battery. And then once we've worked all that out, we can then go and, with a whole lot more surety, go and lock down our pilot plant. We've heard of some other companies who've gone and done pilot plants, and it hasn't turned out so well because it's a big risk. It could be $10 to $20 million, and it's a large amount of money, and it takes over a year to build. And we'd certainly gone down the path of preparing for all that, but when it really came down to it, when we had people ready to be able to do it at much lower cost than we would have to build, and have all that ready in multiple different calibration opportunities. It was really a no-brain conversation. It was a very easy conversation to have with the board, and we worked through it and came out the other side and then announced it.
Okay, that makes sense. So you're not building your own pilot plant, you're using BIC for that. But look, there are companies out there that essentially have this infrastructure already set up to test and develop batteries, quite like what GMG is doing here. Within that news release, let's talk financials then, because it does say that GMG will pay for services rendered and retain all intellectual property. So, what sort of costs are we talking about to work with BIC and use their infrastructure?
It's not a small amount, but it's definitely not a large amount. You're probably more talking around the kind of $50,000 a month type level, something that's manageable. They've done this before. They understand how battery companies go through long development cycles, and that they're prepared for that. They understand that. So that's give or take. That's not every month it's going to be like that, but that's the kind of range we're expecting, and that hence enables us to really see through, long periods of a lot of work with them, really intense work, and it's going to be significantly cheaper than buying our own plant.
Let's talk about this battery cell roadmap. It's within the news release. I'll post it also in the show notes. It outlines a couple years past here and also back to 2023 in terms of how the battery has developed. Walk us through this timeline, most importantly, from here forward.
Yeah, so we've been working on the coin cells, which we did thousands of in 2022, and then 2023, mid halfway through to now, for like a year and a half, effectively, we've been doing pouch cells, which are the bigger batteries. This is a pretty standard way of developing new battery technology. And, we're really in the optimization phase. So unfortunately, batteries are like life. You don't really get anything for free. You got to give up something to get something. And we're optimizing all these different elements of it. And we've got to find out the red type for the company, the customers that we're working with, specifically Rio Tinto publicly. And that's really, all around making sure that, we understand all the various different dimensions, talking at least 10 different dimensions that the batteries are tested on. And so that's what we're in right now, the iterative kind of chemical optimization space, or BTRL4. And it enables us to, to choose way-offs between energy density and power density and such things. And so we expect to be here in this year doing and eventually, producing cells, which would then obviously, once we've actually made clear cells for people to go and test as customers, we'd be announcing that, and we'd be saying to people what we saw as our performance data for those cells. And then, once we go through those tests and we've made enough cells for them to test, because typically the applications we're chasing are, we're working on 100 cells or so at least. So you can't just make one for these guys. They got 100, and they got to put it in a pack, and then they test it, and then they do their testing multiple times. So that's what we expect to do this year, and through next year, we hope to then start to land the contracts for customers, and then we look to build the plant in the following year, in 2027. So it's probably a couple of years off to revenue. It is as good as we thought it was going to be when we initially launched it. The number of companies that are interested and want to work with us behind the scenes has never been stronger. People really see lithium batteries as solid in a certain space, and they see us as a very different space. We're really not even competing with the lithium battery. It's got the opportunity to go into applications which potentially just may never get to be a lithium battery application. I've mentioned previously, it's around having the same truck fleet size for Rio Tinto. And that's a really important element for a smart operator. They need to be able to see when you convert from a lithium battery, which takes half an hour, also from diesel, which takes 5 minutes to charge, refuel, and then a lithium battery, which takes 30 minutes. So with that, you can really seriously increase your fleet size, because you have got, trucks sitting around longer, much longer. Whereas our battery has the opportunity to basically be charged at the same time as a diesel truck to refuel. So that's really the focus of all our work. And that is what, that's a massive applications behind that. Planes, trains, automobiles all want to be able to refuel as fast as you typically have a car or a truck refuel. And business applications, it's more prevalent. Consumer applications, it's less so because there's obviously other ways around that where you can charge it overnight or you can charge it in different ways, which really aren't going to be impacting the use. Whereas business applications, it is quite an issue.
So one thing the news release says, something for us to look forward to, is that the performance of the pouch cells will be communicated upon successfully producing a repeatable, third-party tested 1000 milliamp hour plus battery pouch cell. We talked last year in 2024 about already creating 1000 milliamp hour cell. I had a question that was asking, have you actually produced a in working pouch pack that you can test right now, or is this what this collaboration with BIC is aiming to produce, an actual pouch pack battery that you can start testing?
Yeah, that's correct. We're just looking for that big support to scale up to really have a battery pack, where you've got a number of cells working together. You really need to have a pilot plant to make a number of cells and then optimize through that. And that's kind of where we're at with that. So, that the BIC we expect to be able to help us with that. And the more cells we make, the more optimizations we can optimize and get to a faster scale outcome and faster production of the cells in the end. Because the more cells you can make, the faster you can make them, the faster you can scale.
So what news should we be looking for then from this battery development division? What should shareholders watch for?
Yeah, there's a number of things going on in this area. There's everything from the potential for other joint development partners to come in, and because there's just quite an intense amount of work going on there. And then definitely, providing some updates as we start to go through the BIC work and trying to understand, where the BIC can get us to in different parts of the battery and optimizing it and making more cells with all their equipment. And, I think that could be an announcement relatively soon, but it would take some time just to get everything up and running and then making it all work. Basically like commissioning a plant, but probably a bit faster considering the people that they have there. So, I think those are probably areas that, we're working through on the battery. We'll be updating as soon as we have any information around any of those.
Okay, Craig, thank you very much for this update. As I said, Craig and I are chatting in about 2 weeks' time. I have a whole lot of other questions that we are going to cover. A lot of questions that came in on the G Lubricant division and Thermal XR. I will get to as many of those as I can in the next interview. But Craig, I do appreciate you taking some time for this update on the recent news. Everyone, keep sending me your questions. I'll get those in front of Craig. Craig, again, thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks, Corey.